Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons, how are ya? This is Alex Simmons. I'm Chris Ryan. This is Tell the Damn Story. And can you believe it, Alex? It's the end of 2024.
Yes, you're right. We made it 12 months. 12
Rumbling,
months.
bumbling, and stumbling, but we're here.
We made it. Yep. And both of us are still able to get up out of our chairs eventually.
That's right. Wow, 52 episodes of Tell the Damn Story this year. Things are piling up, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, believe it or not, we still have more to say.
As a matter of fact, this episode, Chris and I are going to share some of our favorite key creative moments or experiences from this year. Well, just 3 each, because it's a huge list, but just 3 each. But that's going to help you,
at least
we're going to share bright spots. It's going to help you also decide, what did you find most effective or most inspirational or most entertaining or relevant to you this year as well?
Even if it's just a bright spot. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to get to that in a minute.
Yes.
Maybe 2 minutes. We'll see.
Okay, maybe 2, yes. But believe me, when we get to it, you're going to get a lot out of it. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, Alex, what I wanted to ask you was, what inspired you this week?
Oh, it's funny you should ask that, because what inspired me this week is also touches on another favorite topic of yours. So I'll tell you what it is, and then you can bring up the second topic. This is the holiday season, Christmas, all that kind of stuff. And I happen to be, as I tend to do, strolling through YouTube looking for vintage material, stuff that I've seen before and wanted to visit again. And sometimes I find new stuff. I found new stuff. I found something that I didn't know existed ever. And it was created back when I was a child. No, not back in the pioneer days. This is a little bit later in my life. Rod Serling, which is a name.
Rod Serling.
Yeah, Rod Serling is a name. Twilight Zone. Any of you who are fans of Twilight Zone, you know that name, Rod Serling. Rod Serling did a number of interesting episodes in the Twilight Zone that talked about social commentaries or racial commentaries or things like that. He managed to weave those things, those themes, or explore those themes in certain episodes of Twilight Zone.
Hi, this is Josh Gunner.
But he also...
My top priority is making Jersey more affordable.
I'm hearing something there.
I got rid of it.
Oh, okay. Rod Serling had done a number of social commentary and things about race and all that, exploring those themes in the Twilight Zone. But it turns out, and I just found this out recently, that he also wrote, I don't know if it was released as a feature film or it was a TV special, but it was an hour and change long film, which was a sort of an adaptation, I guess you would, of A Christmas Carol. And it was, at the time that it was shot, it was present day, and it starred Sterling Hayden, Ben Gazzara, Peter Sellers, and several other notables were in this film about this character who is bitter about Christmas and bitter about life because a certain thing had happened to him. And he has that Ebenezer Scrooge experience with the ghosts visiting him and all that. But it was all about social commentary, about peace, about lack of communication between countries and bickering sides, debating. And if we didn't have these kind of conversations, if we didn't have a place like the United Nations to go and try and discuss these things, that it would eventually lead to some apocalyptic doom. And
Stay tuned.
Yeah, this was Rod Serling's take on A Christmas Carol. And I watched the whole thing, and I was amazed because I had never heard of it. In all the years I've been watching television, going back and looking for old things, it was so well done. It's for the time period that it was filmed, I would say it was probably somewhat controversial at that time. Lightweight now, but at that time, somewhat controversial. And again, with the talent factors that were in there, it was really well written. It was really inspiring to see that work and to know that Serling, he was consistent. He had things he wanted to say, and he found ways to get those conversations going, or to make those statements, or to ask those questions. And he did a really good job with this. So that made me feel really good, and I was very inspired by that particular.
And people can still look it up on YouTube.
Yep.
A matter of fact, I'm going to match it with my own bright spot from this week, also on YouTube.
Oh,
And that's a stand-up comedian. You might know him from The Daily Show. His name is Josh Johnson. I always, whenever I see him, I have to stop and watch and see what he's talking about. And he just, maybe a week ago or so, he put out something he's calling the failure, fear, and frenzy around Luigi Mangione. And it was a really thoughtful piece. It goes on for, I think it's almost an hour, it's a half an hour, something like that. There's not a lot of punchlines in there, but the way he thoughtfully discusses the aspects of that bit of news, when they come, the punchlines are nuanced and they really they hit the target well, and he makes really smart points and worthwhile. So I was like, wow, this kid, he's, I know he's on the Daily Show and that kind of stuff, but I think he's gonna go further than that. I don't want to give the mulioke on him or jinx him, but thoughtful comics, Carlin, Richard Pryor, he's not funny like those two, but he's thoughtful. When either one of them was making a point, they were always very thoughtful about it. Yeah, there's potential there. So check out Josh Johnson.
yeah,
All right.
I've seen a lot of Josh's YouTube clips and some of his routines, and he can be funny, but
Mm,
he is always thoughtful. There's always something behind
yeah,
that asks the question or gets you to look at a certain thing. Everything from present day political to hip hop to
right, right.
slice of life, he's really very good at that. By the way, the
Great delivery.
Rod Serling, the Rod Swelling, yes, the Rod Serling piece that I mentioned is called Carol for Another Christmas, and it's on YouTube. And actually, Chris, I just dropped a link into our chat, and I'll do
Cool.
the same when I upload the episode. So if folks really want to go check it out, they can.
There you go.
There you
And
go.
if you want to check out Josh Johnson, you won't have a problem because
Nope, you will not.
he's on all the socials, YouTube included.
Yep.
So let's talk about today. We're at the end of the year. This is not a best of, this is a million best ofs. This is not a top this or top that. We're just talking about bright spots, things that really hit us, maybe thrilled us a little bit. And let's go keep it short, ladies and gents. Everybody, think about this. This is like we're getting ready for New Year's Eve. By the time you're dressed, we'll be done. Don't worry. Bye. Respect for elders. We have to let Alex go first. If you want to go back and forth 1-1, we can do that. But whatever you want there, Gramps.
Yeah, let's go back and forth, right? So, youngin. So the first thing that I will mention is a TV or streaming special series, which my son Matthew got me to check out with him, and it was called The Penguin.
It was great.
Oh my goodness.
So great.
Really, it's like one can look at iconic characters from mythological to present day fictional characters, but you can look at iconic characters and you can look at Batman or Superman, and every 10 years or so, they get a new set of writers on it, and someone puts their own spin on it, and blah, 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 blah. So there have
Right.
been numerous variations on the Penguin. Burgess Meredith in the TV show. Was it Danny DeVito played it in one of the movies?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many permutations of that character. Nothing like what Colin Farrell did as the
Yeah, this
actor portraying this character, let alone
this
the
for
writing. This was a powerfully well put together, character driven exploration of, I'm going to say, a deviant criminal, a person with problems from childhood that as he grew in the environment that he was growing up in, just continued to develop into the beast that he became. And he's not flawless in even in his evil. He was constantly screwing up, and it was about how's he going to get out of this? How's he going to survive that? And his the complicated relationships with the crony that I don't want to give away too much because some people may not have seen it, but the young crony that he winds up running around with, sort of his version of Robin, and his relationship with his mother and her character was like, wow, it's like the mother from hell, and at the same time as the story developed, you got deeper into her psyche and you start to become amazed at the complexities that she was dealing with. Just really well written, really well produced, some really great performances by, I'd say, 90% of the cast.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed watching the series. And actually, we didn't binge the thing. We would watch an episode or two and then wait a few days because of other things in life and then come back and watch another episode. So
Yeah.
each time I was coming back to the episodes, I was going back, can't wait to see what happens. How's he going to get out of this? How's he going to do this? What's going to happen next? So it was really well put together, very suspenseful, always a page turner experience.
I agree. Yeah, it was closer to The Sopranos than it was the 66 Batman series, I'll
Oh,
tell you that much.
it was nowhere
Right?
near
There you go.
that. You know, if
Yeah.
Cesar Romero had walked on with his mustache painted over, it'd have ruined everything.
None of that. None of that at all. All right, so I'm going to give you a bright spot, and it comes right from Tell the Damn Story, or at least we were smart enough to bring this gentleman on. And that bright spot was the latest novel from Teal James Glenn,
Mm.
Not Born of Woman. It is a sequel of sorts to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, quickly explaining where he's been all this time and then putting him in mid to late 1930s New York City. He's now well-read, philosophical, can quote psychologists and all that sort of stuff, as well as literature. And he is a private detective. It's a fascinating mix of genres and a real passion project from a gifted writer. I would say that was one of my bright spots for this year. And now, ladies and gentlemen, back to Alex Simmons.
By the way, folks, we're going to also come back around after we've named each of these or all of these and really tell you where each of us felt the life lessons for writers is living within these experiences. Hang in there for that. So the next one for me is going to be, which order do I want to do this in? Okay,
That order.
I'll go modern and then I'll save the other oldie for the last. So modern.
So stay tuned.
Yeah. So I mentioned I watched The Penguin with my oldest son, Matthew. My daughter took me to a Broadway show this fall. I believe it was late October, early November. It was called Message in a Bottle. And it's a musical, complete musical extravaganza, if you will. A storyline about immigration and what it was like for people who lived in, let's just say, possibly a second or third world country when a revolution breaks out and they're driven from their homes due to persecution or whatever. They must escape and come to America as immigrants. And then what happens to them in that process? Again, not necessarily great things or the struggles to get through that and possibly come out the other end in a better life. And it's all that theme and that story is beautifully meshed and held together by the music of Sting.
Of course, Message in a
So
Bottle.
it's all his songs, and many of the songs like Message in a Bottle and some of the other films, some of the other songs of that he's created, that he's written, he's recorded. It's all of his music, and it's just so beautifully arranged, and how each moment within the story, the proper music sets for the background or the major number that takes place at that time. That was great. The dance troupe, the troupe of dancers were phenomenal. I think that once you become a truly professional dancer, someone sprinkles pixie dust on you because there are things that they do that I think defy the laws of physics. There were several numbers where they were dancing and they would leap into the air. Their legs would come up in almost like a sort of a meditational fold, and they'd appear to hang there for a second. It's like I'm just gonna float here for a moment. I go leap into the air, I come right back down. These guys would go up, and there's this pose in the air. It's like time suspension, and then they'd be back down and going through other moves. There's a wonderful combination of classical ballet mixed with hip hop mixed with jazz. It's just really well done. And as I said, a very solid, inclusive, diverse story about the pursuits for a better life, whatever your point of origin may be, and that hope and what one has to go through, and sometimes what demons you must face in the process. So I found just the whole mixture of those experiences together very inspirational, and just another prime example of what one can do when you just throw off the shackles and say, I'm just going to go creative. I'm just going to explore the possibilities and maybe mix mediums and see what I come up with.
Yeah, very cool. Which, by the way, that's what Teal did. He just mixed these things up and it became so fresh.
Yeah.
For my second choice, I'm going to stay with TDS, a Tell the Damn Story guest, and that's the one and only Damon Manx this year put out a four-part or five-part? I think it was a four-part series called The Ojinox. It's like classic 1980s throwback type horror, but it was a thing that he wrote at the tail end of a really rough patch in his life, and it collided with COVID. So he was locked in to a place he didn't want to be with people he didn't want to be. And he put on the headphones and wrote. You really should go back and look at the Damon Manx episode if you haven't seen it, because his story is so much better than I'm have time to tell you here. Now, the Ojinox is an evil entity locked for, I don't know, hundreds of years under a mountain in Rockland or Westchester, New York. But once released, it quickly becomes a threat and a devastating evil in the whole town. And the story just keeps getting bigger. It's challenging for a young writer, and he is still a young writer at this point. It's challenging to do a story like that and get everything right for a short story. It is measurably harder for a novella or a novel, but to do it for four novels,
Oh yeah,
it
that's right.
roughly at that when you're done, it's about the size of The Stand by Stephen King and plows similar territory. And it is, I'm very proud to know him. It's really a great accomplishment, just like Teal's book. It was really a highlight of my year to see creative people in our circle do extremely well. And again, it's going to be a long winter. I hear that the prediction is going to be cold and snowy and all that stuff in a lot of different parts around the world. But yeah, it's going to be chilly.
Metaphors like the corners of my mind. Okay.
Sometimes you just need to crack open a story that you're going to be able to hang around in for a while. And Damon Manx's The Ojinox series is exactly that. Go check out both of those authors. We did a whole episode on each one of them. Worth going back and seeing or listening to, and then great stuff for you to read over the winter. And as far as being a writer who is emerging in your own right or looking to find out how to do what you want to do, one of the best ways to do that is to read often and read a lot of different writers. You may not have read these two. You should fix that. And again, just their style, the energy off the page, I hope will inspire you and maybe answer some questions for you as to, oh, that's how I do that. Oh, yeah.
And remember, like I said, when we finish this back and forth, because we each have one more to go, we'll come back around and reiterate some of the points that you can benefit from each of these.
That's right.
Okay.
We'll
So,
get all pointy at the end of
right.
this episode.
And I also will put in the show notes for you, or in the comments area, I'll put the episodes that Chris is referring to for both Teal and for Damon Manx.
There you
So
go.
that'll be there for you. Make it a little bit easier for you to go back, not in my time machine, but to go back and listen
Yeah,
to
that's
some
right.
wonderfulnesses.
From earlier
Um,
this year. What's
so
your
my
third
next
one,
one,
Alex?
yes, my next one, my last one is I was gonna do another family thing, but no, I like my family. Okay, just deal with that. But what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna go back in my time machine again. I was, I believe, 11 years old, maybe 12, when I first saw this movie in the theater, and it had a profound effect on me. And I think possibly in a few episodes of Tell the Damn Story over the years, I may have mentioned the effect that this one particular film had on me. But I watched it again this year, yet again, and I'm way past 11. I think it's 111 now, am I, or something like that, right? Just to take this away from Chris,
111.
because I know he's going to go for that, right? But
172.
yeah, 11 to 2. Yeah, it's a film, a Walt Disney film, oddly enough, called Lady and the Tramp, and it's one of those films. By the way, they did a live action version of it. I think it was a couple of years ago, which, but anyway, the original. uh, it's got a number of PC problems. It is, as a matter of fact, when you watch the film, as in the opening credits, just before the movie itself actually starts, there's a disclaimer or an apology, or however you want to look at it, from Disney, saying, okay, there's some things in this that shouldn't have been done, shouldn't have been said, representations that maybe shouldn't have been portrayed the way they were, and we apologize for that. But try and appreciate what the story is beyond that. And I'm thinking it's good that they put that in there, because I can remember as a kid watching this movie in the movie theater. I can remember what theater I was in. I can remember the day of the week, all of that. And I have a very strong recollection of how the film affected me when I saw it. And as a person of color, theoretically, you would think I might have been more sensitive to some of the stereotypical representations that were in it, not necessarily of Black people. We weren't in the movie. We didn't make the cut. But I watched it again this holiday season. It's a Christmas story in its own way. And
Same as Die Hard is a Christmas story.
exactly like that. Yeah. Except Bruce wasn't available for this first one. As I'm watching the movie, I'm saying, what is worth appreciating of this film now? Now that my head is where it is, now that our society has gone through what it's gone through. And it's still a story about acceptance and finding your place in the world. And it's funny because at the same time that they were making fun of certain other people and their places in the world through these representations or misrepresentations, they were telling a story about, in effect, for those of you who don't know the story, it's all dogs, right? It's, we see human beings, but the story is about the dogs. And it's about a female dog who named Lady, who has a beautiful home and loving family, if you will, two humans that love her, and they have a baby, and she loves the baby, and all that kind of stuff. So her life is set. And a street dog named Tramp, who is making it on the street, just doing what he can to survive. And he's got tricks and things that he does. He's good at escaping the dog catcher. He's got a reputation with the ladies. It's all of those things are like, this is the wild kid, this is the bad boy, and here's the good girl. It's Grease, but with dogs and cartoons, right? So it's
And
all of those
pasta.
things. So it's still about, where do I fit in? Can people from different worlds come together? And I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, all right, so I can appreciate that aspect of it. It still is, for me, pretty to look at. And then there's this one scene, which again, not giving away too much, with you haven't seen it, it's 50 years, but there's this one scene that is a tearjerker towards the end of the movie. And I've seen this film now, I don't know, maybe 30 times over the years. And it gets me every single time. My eyes begin to tear up, and I'm sitting there going, don't, damn it, yeah, gets me every single time. And I will, when we go back to discussing why these things have some importance for you this time, I'll explain why I think it's so successful with that.
Okay.
But it was inspirational to say that there was a certain amount, with all the non-PC aspects, there was a certain amount of craftsmanship in this film that still works all these years later. And that's because everybody involved gave 100%. So anyway,
Excellent.
that's the inspirational part of the film. And as I say, I'll talk about the more analytical aspects of it when we do our roundup.
Cool. Excellent. Excellent. My last one, I was going to talk about my dog, Sunny. Every
Ah,
once in a while, you need to
Bow
look
Wow.
into the piece of the universe, and that is held within a dog's eyes. But
Isn't he also head of
instead,
security?
yes, he is, and things must be safe because he's out cold at my feet right now. But instead of Sunny, who is, I guess that's going to have to cover him, I'm going to talk about Glorious and I were looking for a palate cleanser between binging different series and whatever. And I suggested this thinking we would last 1 or 2 episodes. And we're now on season 6. It's a show we watched shortly before our sons were born and then continued to do so until I'm sure we were too tired because we're in season 6 and we don't remember it at all. So we may
Oh
not
my
have
goodness.
finished the series. But it's called Homicide: Life on the Streets. And the thing
Yaphet
that is,
Kotto.
I'm sorry?
Yaphet Kotto was one of the
Yaphet
stars.
Kotto is in
Yeah.
it. Richard Belzer's in it.
Yep.
It goes on and on. It was based on a book by the same name by a guy named David Simon, who was a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, and it's set in Baltimore. It's part of a lifetime worth of work. Homicide: Life on the Streets, The Corner, The Wire, all David Simon generated projects. Of course, there were other people making it come into fruition, but this was the first swing at trying to depict a city. And the episodes stand up so well. They were just mostly police work for the first 5 seasons. The 6th season started taking some creative risks and started being more heavy issue oriented, but they're still pretty well. Characters come in and out. The most famous of the characters is Richard Belzer's, which is Detective Munch, who a lot of you are just went, huh? Isn't he from Law and Order's SVU? Yes, he is. He started in Homicide. If you're a real fan of Law and Order, they did some crossovers. And eventually, when Homicide was winding down, Munch went over there. But Munch also holds a Guinness Book of World's Record for being the fictional television character that has appeared on most different TV shows. He was on an episode X-Files. He was just a bunch of different places, but this is where he gets the start. And it was just very engaging. It aged really well. This was a show that was almost all handheld camera work. So it's a little more intimate. Every once in a while, the actors don't put rubber gloves on their hands when they're at a crime scene. That annoys me. But other than that, I have very few complaints. And it is for those of you who are out there as writers and thinking you want to write a police-oriented story or a police procedural or a mystery with cops or whatever, you could do far worse than checking out Homicide for a kind of tutorial on banter in the squad car, in the squad, that kind of stuff. It's very different than the usual cop show with the, all right, everybody gather around. And of course, Yaphet Kotto is always a treat to watch. Also, the late Andre Braugher is in it. That's where he got his start. Where's your voice, bro?
Sorry, I muted myself because I was looking for a reference for that same thing, and I didn't want to accidentally overshadow you if some noise came up when I was
And
looking.
your very presence overshadows me, sir, because
Yeah.
you are Alex
My
Simmons,
hair keeps
and I
disappearing.
am merely that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So there you go.
But you're right. Andre Braugher, who we unfortunately lost this year, was in that. And it's funny that you mentioned this cop show that he was in, and then the last TV show that he did was,
Brooklyn
yeah,
Nine,
Brooklyn Nine, what, Nine? Brooklyn
Brooklyn
Nine?
Nine-Nine. Yeah, I think it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But,
talk about two very different expressions
mm-hmm.
of a serious cop. It's really wonderful to have those bookends in his career. And if you are creative in the acting way, watch Andre in both those shows,
Yeah.
and you are in a masterclass. Fascinating, fascinating performer. So those are bright spots. Alex, you wanted to go by the rap here?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to say that regarding my three, starting with Penguin, I said a little of this when I was introducing the topic, and that is that there are iconic characters out there that have been around for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years or more. Tarzan is something that I got to work on. Sherlock Holmes is another character I got to work on. These are characters that have been written and rewritten again by hundreds
Sorry,
of
bro.
other people. And what's really useful is to understand that when you have the opportunity as a writer to take on an iconic character, couple of questions that you might ask, depending on whether or not you're being approached or you're going after the assignment, is one, I would always like to say, approach the project first off with respecting the source material. Understand that someone created this, it's had a life, and now here you are. And what do you bring to the table? Are you being brought in to completely revamp this and give it a new spin, so forth and so on? Or are you brought in to bring to the table a new adventure or another set of characters to go up against or interact with this stoic individual? For reference, I was just listening to, and I forget who wrote Reacher. Who wrote the Reacher
I
series?
was Jack, no, Jack Reacher.
Anyway,
I'll
I was
find out. You go
listening.
ahead.
Yeah, I was listening to the author of that, and he talked about how over the 20 some odd books that he's written with the character, part of his effort has been to keep Reacher's character pretty much the same. There has not been great changes in his nature, his character, and so forth. Subtle ones, yes, but not great changes. And so sometimes when you're doing work with an iconic character,
Lee
someone else
Child.
established,
Lee,
excuse me,
Lee Child.
Lee
Lee.
Child, that when you're doing work with an iconic character that's already been worked on in different ways, it is what do I bring to the table? What's my reason for being here? And how do I accomplish that? And like with the Penguin, their effort was not to do another version of what's been done before. It was what has been done before, okay, that, and that. But what can we do that's going to make this piece stand out by itself and yet still be a part of the Batman universe, which is
Mhm.
different from the way the movie Joker has been approached. It's really about when you have an opportunity, should you have an opportunity to work on iconic characters, it's not about, oh, good, I get to mess with this and just make it whatever I want. You got to ask these questions first. You got to get permission first. If you're given permission and you want to go for it, that's a whole nother thing. But initially is what do I bring to the table that's going to make it worthwhile for
All right.
me to do this? What do they want from me? And what can I add that's going to allow me to be proud of my work? So that's something I think is key. Yeah.
I would add to that the Penguin gives us a great opportunity to, as students of writing, right? Because both the audience and you and I are always seeking to learn to improve our craft. You can probably get your hands on a copy or an episode of the 66 Batman with the Penguin in it. You
Mm-hmm.
can, Max has all the old cartoons with the Batman in it. I'm sure they have the iterations of Batman, whether it's Tim's or Christopher Nolan's, and now the Matt Reeves universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really do a study on what each of these creators are doing with these iconic characters. And that can help you with your own work. So what am I saying? What am I talking about with this piece? And after the first draft. So again, first draft is all about getting through it. But between first and second, or second and third, what is this about? It's a great question to ask yourself. It is nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not a mistake. So many writers think, oh, I don't know. I made a mistake. No, it's about the discovery.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? What am I really writing about? And it's probably after the second draft that you'll be, oh, this is
This
what
is
I'm
where it's
trying to say.
going. Yeah.
And that will allow you to go back and seed some things or adjust some things to fulfill that statement that you're making. And you
Exactly.
can see all the statements, every statement of Batman or his villains has been very different according to the creative. So it's a great opportunity.
Right. Also, the Rod Serling piece is another one of what has gone before and what can I do with this and what am I trying to say?
Yeah.
In Dickens' A Christmas Carol, that was one statement. That was one message that he was trying to get across. It was really a message about caring,
Hmm.
about being a human being. It was not so much, it wasn't about religion. It was about not cutting off your humanity, opening up your humanity to your fellow human beings and to be a part of the community, be a part of the world, and be a benefit to it. And that was more what that one's about. In the Serling's piece, it also talked about not closing off, not becoming hard and bitter and cold and ignoring society, ignoring your fellow human being. But it also showed us the darker side of our society and where it could go as a society if we
Yeah.
didn't do better. It was not about one person's change, it was about what could affect your fellow human beings, your community, if we as a people don't change and if the society doesn't change and open up and care. Once again, it's something that was established before, what was done before, what can I do with it, and what do I want to say? And that's again the Rod Serling, A
Yeah.
Carol for Another Christmas.
Yeah. If I could add to that, and I'm sorry I was distracted for a second. I was looking to see if I could give this individual credit. I had put it up, reposted it into my stories and Instagram, this Chris Ryan. There was a gentleman who was talking about Dickens previous to A Christmas Carol. He had traveled America and he did a collection of essays or whatever you want to call it. I think he called it the American Journal. And his publishers said, we're not, because he was talking about slavery and conditions in America and all that sort of stuff. And they were like, we're not publishing this. And he went and he was looking at around England, London, and the workhouses and that kind of stuff. Wrote something about that. And his publishers said, mm-mm, no, just like the American, what are you doing? No, we can't do this stuff. So both of them were about man's inhumanity to man. And both of them were about the coldness, the cruelness that humanity was capable of towards its brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And he got node on both. And he wrote the character of Scrooge and A Christmas Carol. And those things are all in that story. Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? Right?
Mm-hmm.
These are all references. So I thought it was a fascinating little bit of tidbit of a story, a beloved story, but it's also a great lesson about there's more than one way to say what you want to say.
Exactly.
And there you go on that one.
Okay.
All
And
right,
then the
sir.
last one for me was The Message in a Bottle, which I can just say very simply, it's no, I'm sorry, it was Lady and the Tramp. I talked about Message in a Bottle before. Lady and the Tramp again, I feel like I inadvertently chose older pieces that still for some in some way, shape, or form hold up or cause me to think about certain things again in a different way. And as I think about that movie, the representations, or I should say, the stereotypical representations of Italians, of Chinese, there's another group in there that I forget at the moment. Uh, these are obviously it's never acceptable, especially when it's the only representation that's
Right.
out there. If it's a sprinkling of this against a sea of the actuals, the more varied possibilities of what it's like to be Chinese or Italian or black or whatever, that's different. Then, oh, this character is like this, but then there's all these other characters who are doing this and this. But when it's the only representation and it's stereotypical, then that's problematic. And
Right.
so when I look at this movie, I think of if I had to change it, what would I do? And how would I do it? And I can think of certain ways that I would, as I did with the Tarzan story, how I could show the African inhabitants of that region, but not the way they were in the 1940s movies or even in a couple of the things done in the 50s and 60s, because that's not how I see my people, and that's not how those people should be seen.
Right.
but you can still bring the same adventure and excitement and exotic locales and different cultural lifestyles to the table and present it in a respectful way and yet still get all the energy and things you need out of that story. So I feel again, when we look at how we represent people whose lives are not like our own, people whose culture or race or religion is not like our own, we should try and be respectful of that and do the homework to try and get as much information so we can be authentic and accurate. And what we don't know, ask. And after we finish writing it, check in with people who do know. So that I think Chris has done that with a number of stories. I know I've done that with a number of stories. I can never know what it's like to be a woman when I write female characters, but I can have females read my stories and give me
Right.
some feedback
Sure.
and try and listen openly. Oh, no, but I like her this way. No, if it's not authentic, if it's not, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So get it right so that character becomes more authentic to the reader and the world becomes more authentic. Once again, in writing something that is not about the world that you live in or the life that you lead, do your homework and try and be respectful and authentic.
There you go. There's a possibility that you won't please everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But I had a guy read one of my novels, and he said there's not a lot of diversity in there. I said I didn't write any identifiers. You cast them the way you want. And he said, what? And then he says, how about women? There's not a woman in the lead role. There's no, I was like, not in this story. But there are women all through the story. There was no police. This was a point that this person, he liked it, everything else. But I think he wanted,
No,
you
you
can't
can't please
please
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
I was
And the other thing
respectful.
too is you're hearing feedback when you're getting reviews, when your teacher is even commenting on your work or your coach or whoever. You gotta listen with that ear that says, are they helping me spot things that I need to work on to
Right.
make my work better? Or are they telling me how they would write it?
And there 9 out of the 10 points he made were really helpful.
Mm.
And that was, I didn't come in 10th, but that was the only point that I was like, yeah, and you don't go, I refrained from pointing out the 12 to 14 women that are in that particular novel because you shouldn't be defensive about anything. I said there are other stories where women are more prominent. The most prominent woman in this story is one of the characters' wives, and she's not leading the charge on anything. So I
Mhm.
understand what you're saying. I'll take it under advisement. What are you going to do? It doesn't make any sense to ask for feedback and argue. Just a point of sometimes this happens. Be ready for it.
Yeah.
All right. What did we learn from Chris's bright spots? One, I'm a big fan of the guests that we have on the show. But what did you, as writers, what can you take away? It would be a really fun exercise to read, excuse me, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and then Teal James Glenn's Not of Woman Born, because you will see that it is possible to pay tribute to a classic character and still make it your own, not appropriating, not plagiarizing, not stealing, but respecting the source material and adding to the legend is a fascinating thing. He could do that with Mary Shelley because Frankie's in public domain at this point. Couldn't do it with Alex Simmons' Blackjack because still under his control, that guy. So be careful about that. But it's both of them are great reads. And then it would be a fascinating read for those of you who love storytelling or want to tell your own stories to see how it works. And maybe you might see something like, I would have done something differently. Then go ahead, do something. But that's that first one. The Ojinox series, to really appreciate it and you will have the gift of knowing that anything is possible. If you watch the Damon Manx episode, there's actually two of them. There's one when he tells his whole backstory, and then there's the one about the Ojinox. But you see those and then check out if that's your style of books. Some of you are romance writers, so maybe this wouldn't be yours, but the Ojinox series is continually engaging. And when you know the backstory, you find yourself cheering for Damon and cheering for the characters, which is quick reads and gripping page turners, but knowing where they came from should turbocharge you in whatever you're writing. Because if this guy can do it, and he did a great job, and I'm very proud to know him, so can all of you. And then the last thing, what can we learn from homicide life on the streets is that gems win out. Every once in a while, seeing an old gem kind of feed you and get you. I know that I found myself wanting to go back or tell a story, or it got me through some of the other things that I was doing for Soul Scream or this or that, or the project that's I just sold to another publisher, because you see this great storytelling and you run. I always run back to the computer and want to go and do that. So the cat's out of the bag on that one. I guess I should fill people in on that.
If you finished with your round off, yes, you should
That's
definitely.
my round off, ladies and gentlemen. Go grab some old story that or old series that you loved and watch it again and see if it stands up. If it does, why? And if it doesn't, what happened?
Why?
What aged poorly? You can always learn, and
Yeah.
you put that into your tool bag of what you use when you write. Inspiration paid off. It was a happy accident, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a member of the New York chapter of Horror Writers Association, the Horror Writers Association, and they do a YouTube show, great YouTube show called Galactic Terrors. And they have sometimes members of the chapter, sometimes other names and all that stuff. They have two or three people average, that read from their work, a short story or whatever, and it's the horror genre. Not too bloody. They don't very rarely get out of hand. And then they have an author interview and that kind of thing. And I was watching an episode, I guess it was in 2023 sometime. And a writer named Sarah Tam was doing a reading. And she had written a whole collection of poems and stuff, on the serial killer in the Chicago World's Fair. And so she's reading from that. And I'm having a little lack of confidence in whether it was prose or poetry. But anyway, she's reading, and I usually am rapt attention. But it was something about her reading, richness of the words, the effectiveness, that I just always have notebooks around. This room is crazy with notebooks. And I just started writing some things down. Oh, these were on index cards. And I started writing poetry. I haven't written poetry since college. And they were from a point of view I didn't know the person. Long story short, I know that person now. And what started as inspiration from Sarah's reading became a narrative crime horror collection of poems. So it's narrative poems that tell a police story from the antagonist's point of view, from the killer's point of view. The killer, the antagonist, the villain, whatever, the monster, for his own amusement, edification, whatever, writes poems in a journal. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes he thinks they're a lot better than they are, but they depict what he does, how he does it, and they depict struggles he has in his mind. And I
This
submitted it.
inspired you?
Huh?
This inspired you?
Her reading about the Chicago World's Fair killer inspired this for some, I don't know how. I'm just happy and grateful to her that it did. And it's very much today's monster. And it's called It's Been a Privilege. And it is all one volume coming out. I think it's about 103, 105 pages. And it's coming out from Alien Buddha Press, and probably early in 2025, but I haven't really discussed with Red, the publisher, when the publishing date would be.
Red, the publisher. Okay.
Yes, he was very generous in allowing me to get the cover done. And the person who's doing the cover has been published by Alien Buddha Press. I thought that was appropriate. And she's also a good friend of the show, Rebecca Cuthbert.
Oh,
And
yes.
she showed me an early take on it. I had sent her some source materials. She had done something completely different, and it was fantastic. And then she did something with the material I sent, and Tina, Glorious, and I both said, we like your ideas better. So hopefully the publisher will also agree. Yeah, so that's coming out, man.
Excellent. You'll keep us posted on that here on the show and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And
see,
we
so
had
all this
Rebecca on
inspiration
several
works,
times.
ladies and gents. I'm
Excuse me?
sorry. I said all this inspiration works.
Yeah,
You know?
right. So
Not
we're
only
gonna
do we talk about writing,
yes,
but
we
we
said that
practice
we would-
it on our own.
What he said. And what else he said was that we would keep this short because it's that time of year and you guys
We better stop right
ready
now
to
because
commence if people still boogie. But either way, you're going to go out and have a good time this week and have a good New Year's Eve, all that good stuff. I hope you got something out of this. Like I said, in the comments area there for or the show notes area, I'll put in the link for the Rod Serling piece. What else did I say I would put the link in there for?
for every single thing we have ever talked about for
Exactly.
almost 350 episodes. No,
Right. No, the two, right?
Damon, Teal, Twilight Zone,
And Manx. Damon Manx, Teal,
Damon
and
Manx,
Twilight Zone. Those are
Teal
the
James
three things.
Glenn, Twilight Zone.
Okay, so those will be in the show notes or in the comments area for you. Click on and you can go to those episodes and it'll make it a little bit easier and quicker for you. And on that note, I will say, have a happy New Year's, everybody.
Have a happy New Year's Eve.
Yes. Let's make the most.
Good luck to
New
all of
Year's
us
Eve
in 2025.
and get ready to face 2025, the way I look at it. Okay. Either way, Chris, a pleasure.
Live long and prosper, sir.
Yes, that too. Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Peace.